Hi everyone, welcome to the Coding Channel. Today is the 26th episode of our Java programming tutorial series. And in this episode, we are going to talk about method overloading in Java. This and more when we come back. Now, what is method overloading? Method overloading happens when a class has two or more methods by the same name but different parameters. Why do we need to use a method overloading? I mean, why do we need to overload a method? The advantage is that if we have to perform only one operation, having the same name of the methods increases the readability of the program. And actually, there are three ways on how we could overload a method. And the first one is by having a different number of parameters. So again, we have in this example, I have here two methods named multiply. Actually, these are static methods with an integer return type. Okay, we overload the multiply method by having another method here with a different number of integer formal parameters. Okay, and then so let's try to use this method or to access this method. Okay, if we have watched our previous episode, specifically the episode 25th about value returning methods, you know already how to call or access a value returning method. Okay, so let's try to review again. So if you try to access the multiply method here, all we need to do is to just specify the method name. For example, we have multiply, and then uh, we don't. We pass two values, either two integer values or three integer values. If we have this type of a method call having a multiply method call without argument, if you try to execute this program, you will get this type of error or a syntax error. It's because we don't have a method having no parameters. So for instance, if you want to pass, for example, we have n1 and n2 integer variables here with values 3 and 2. So I'll try to pass n1 and n2. So again, we call this as actual parameter. And this one is a formal parameter. What's the difference? In formal parameters, we have a variable declaration inside of the parentheses. And like here, we don't need to declare a data type here. Okay, because this is an actual parameter. Okay, so now, can we call now the multiply method with the two parameters? Having the two parameters, the Java now will consider to execute this method, the first method, because of the number. The basis is the number of parameters. Okay, so let's try to run this one. Okay, as you can see, by calling the multiply method with this syntax, having by specifying the name and then the number of parameters you pass in are both correct because we have two integer values here. But the problem here is we got a runtime error. Why? It's because um, we are supposed to call a method having a return statement. And with this statement, this method will return an integer value to the calling method. So once that value has been returned, what are you going to do with that? That's the question. That's why we have a runtime error here. This method call is valid only if you are calling a void method. That does, after you call, okay, you don't need to, you're not expecting any value to be returned. Okay, but if you are calling again a value returning method, you have to handle the return value. Either, so what's the solution? Either you assign it to an integer variable. For example, we have product. Okay, so after you call, and then after this method, for example, return that value. So the product of two numbers, in this case, we have 2, so 6 now will be assigned to product. And then later, if you want, for example, to display that the value of product, so you can just do it by using system.out.print, and then you specify here the variable. So that's the first way on how to do it. Okay, but if you intend not to store the value, the return value, okay, you can actually just call the value returning method directly inside of an output statement. All we need to do is just to specify the um, method name and then the number of parameters, just like this one. Okay, so this one is the first way on how we handle uh, the return value. I mean, yes, either you assign and then you print, or you will have only one statement, let's say an output statement. So when Java encounter this method call, the program control temporarily stops here at this line number 21, and then will jump into the multiply method in a line number 27 and execute this method. Once the value has been returned, that's the only time Java will print out the output. Okay, that's how it works. So which either of the two are both, valid method call. Method call to what? To a value returning method. Now, how do we call the another method? Okay, if for example we want to add another here, for example we have 1, so this only means that we are calling the second multiply method having 3 integer parameters, because we have this 3 values passing here. So number one is like num1 will be receiving the value of n1, num2 will receive the value of n2, and then num3 will have the value of 1, and then we will just multiply and then print out. Okay, so let's try to run this example, and then now we have an output 6 6. Okay, why? Because after printing here, the result is 6, and then since we use a print, so the cursor stays on the current line, then we have another print here, that's why we have a 6 and then 6 there. Okay, now another way to overload a method is to have a method having a different data type of parameters. For instance, we have a multiply here with 3 parameters, but this one is also having 3 parameters, but of a double data type. So this one is also a valid way on how we overload a method. Okay, but take note, we have a different data type here. Yes, take note that don't be confused with that. When we overload a method, we are focusing only on the name, on the method name having the same name and a different number of parameters or different data types. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether the return type is different to another method. So we are still overloading that method. Okay, so how are we going to use this method, for example, or when is the right time that Java will execute this method? Okay, let's go back to the uh, here. Okay, let's try to copy this one. Then, for example, how do I call this method? Multiply. Okay, so if I, for example, pass 2.1, and then for example 3.3, and then 1.2, for example. Okay, so if I passed the floating point values to multiply method, okay, so Java will recognize this method multiply having three parameters of a double data type. Okay, so we have a later we will have to double check if Java execute the statements, we will have a double a string there in our output. Okay, so let's try. Let's run. Oh, there's a again. Let's try to run. There's a syntax error. Overload 22. Okay, why? It's because the multiply here. Oh, okay. That is a very good observation. Take note. We are calling again a multiply method with a void return type, meaning this method will not return a value. So the correct way on how we call this one is by not displaying the output, because inside of the multiply there's already an output statement there. Okay. Okay, so the valid way on how to call it is just by specifying the name and then the number of parameters here, the actual parameters. Okay, so that's a very good error. Okay, so our output now, the 6 and 6, these are the output of the first two output statements here. So this only proves that, since we have double here, so this only proves that Java execute the third method multiply, having the three double um, parameters. Okay, now the another way of on how to overload a method is having a method with a different sequence of data types of parameters. So let's say, for example, we still have a multiply method, both have a string um, return a value. Okay, but this time the first argument differs to to one another. The first one we have int num1, and then the other one we have double num1. So if we change the data type, okay, Java will recognize this. This one is still valid since we have a different sequence of data types. Okay, so we still overload the method. So let's try to use this one again. Let me try this one. I just have to move up for us to see. Okay, now how do we access this method? So for instance, if we want to, I'll just have to comment this one first. Okay, and then let's just use one output statement here. So if we are going to pass this one, num1, so let's try to put here, no, here. We are going to use this one. The product is, okay, so once we have the product A, so that's the proof that the Java access this one. So we will pass as first value, first parameter, integer, and then the other one is a floating point. So we will have integer and then floating point. Let's try to have a 2.1. Okay, let's try to run, and then the output is an error. Okay, we have an error again. Unresolved compilation problem. Type mismatch. Cannot convert from string to int. Okay, string to int. Yeah, of course. Because we are passing this one. Okay, it's a string. It's a good thing that we have an error. It's for you also to learn that because oftentimes you will encounter this type of error. Okay, so it's very good that we have an error. We don't need to be perfect in here, because it's a very good that we encounter errors and we show to you how to solve that particular error. That's also our goal here. Okay, so once we run now, okay, that is syntactically correct, and then we have the output, the product is. So let's try to see again. Okay, the product is, okay, so that's the proof that Java execute this type of code. Now if we want to exchange, for example, we have 3.1 here, and in here we just use the n2, for example. So the first argument is double, the second argument is of type integer. So we mean to access this one. Okay, So we are expecting the output, the product of whatever the value of num1 and num2, and then we'll just multiply it. Okay, so let's just try to run, and then we'll see. The output is the product of 3.1 and 2 is 6.2. So that's the proof that we have access a method multiply having the first argument a double and the second argument integer. Now let us have some exercise here. Okay, we need to determine if this one is a valid method heading or having a formal parameters or not, or if we overload this method. Okay, case one, for example, we have two method heading here. Both have the method my method method name. Both have integer uh, returned value. Okay, the only difference is that um we have here three parameters. The first two integer, and then the last one is float. Same with the second method, int var1, int var2, and then float var3. So meaning the only difference is the variable names, but we have the same number of parameters. We have the same data type. Okay, so what do you think? Is this example a valid or not? Okay, the answer is invalid. Okay, why? Because we have the same data type. So even if we have a different variable name here, Java will treat this as an invalid way on how we overload method. Okay, because this one, whatever the variable that we have here, for as long as we have the same data type, so you don't need to, this one is not acceptable. Okay, that's what I mean. Okay, case number 2. Let's try. We have both my method, int, and then float, float. Is this a valid way on how to overload? Yes. Okay, it's because of take note, we have three ways on how to overload the method. The first one is we having different number of parameters. So they have both have the same number of parameters. Okay, but so this example is an example of our second way, which is having a different data type. So this case 2 is a valid. Okay, case 3. We have int, and then int num. Is this a valid way of overloading a method? Yes. Okay. And this example falls under the first way on how we overload method. That is having different parameters. Okay, this one has two parameters and this one has only one parameter. Okay, case number 4. Okay, we have, is this valid or invalid? Int float, float int. Okay, so this one falls under the third way on how to overload is the sequence of data type. Since this one int float, okay, float int, so this one is still valid. Okay, next, what about the case number 5? We have int, and then we have another int. So meaning we have two parameters. Both have two parameters and both have same data type. Okay, but the only difference is that the return type. So in this case, this one is invalid. Okay, take note. We only overload the method having the same name but different number of parameters, different data types, or a different sequence of data types. But it doesn't matter whether we we have a different return type. So this one is an example of overloading a method. Okay, so I hope that makes it clear to you. Okay, so I have here a note. If two methods have the same name, same parameters, okay, and have different return type, then this is not a valid method overloading. Okay, let's try another example. Okay, now I have a question here. Can we overload a Java main method? Okay, the answer is yes. By method overloading, you can have any number of main methods in a class by method overloading. But take note that the Java Virtual Machine or JVM calls a main method which receives a string array as arguments only. Okay, so can you guess which of these three main methods, for example, is the built-in method? Okay, of course this one, the first one, because when Java will just the Java interpreter will just find the main method having only the string arguments on array. So by having a main and then string args, this one is a valid way of overloading a main method because this one accepts a string value coming from the user. So these two method main are a user-defined method now. Okay, and we are overloading. This is the proof that we are overloading the main method. So take note. Okay, what do you think is the output if we have three main methods? Okay, let's just try to run. Okay, so why do you think that the output is only main with string? Okay, if we try to to observe here. Okay, since the JVM only calls the built-in method main having the string array, which is this one, okay, the only output is main with string. Although we have two other main methods, we overload it, but we did not call this method. That's why our output is only this one. Take note that the user-defined method will only be called if we have a method call. Okay, so we can only access this if we have a method call. So take note of that. Okay, so let's try to access this one. How are we going to access the second method, the one that we overload? Okay, so we will put it here. Since we are also calling a method, a void method, and inside of this method, there's already an output statement. So we will just try to specify the method name, main. And then, for example, let's try to pass a string hello, because the second main here expects a string value coming from the calling method. Okay, so this one is invalid because we are just calling the void method. You don't need to assign, you don't need to display an output or to put this a method call inside of an output statement. Okay, so we are learning now. Okay, if you are going now to run, okay, so we have now the output main with the string hello. Okay, so that's the only time that we access the main method since we already have now the method call. So what about the other method without an argument? How can we call this one? How can we access this method? Okay, so if you have a method call having no argument, that's the only time that you uh, can access this method main without argument. Okay, so now we have the three outputs. So this is a main without argument. So let's try another example that I have prepared to you guys. Okay, so we have a method overloading here and type promotion. Okay, so what does it mean? Okay, let's try. Just have to put it here. Okay, first. Now take note. One data type is promoted to another implicitly if no matching data type is found. Okay, so it's like, for example, in here. So byte can be promoted to short, int, long. Short can be promoted to int, long, or float, or double. Int could be promoted to a type long, float, double. Float can be promoted to double. Long can be promoted to float or double. Car or char can be promoted to int or long or float or double based on the ASCII code equivalent of a particular letter, for example. Okay, so let's try. These are example of method overloading with type of promotion. Okay, so we have int a and long b. Okay, for example, int a and long b. So for instance, we only pass what? Let's try. Let's try to pass a two integer here. Okay. So we will call this main method. Inside of main, we will pass, for example, 3 and 2. Okay. So let's try. Let's try to run. And then the output we get is an error, of course, because we need to what to put this inside of a comment first. Okay. Okay, we have a comment. Okay, we put that inside of a comment now. Okay, let's try to run. There's still an error. Java 12. Why? It's the error here. There. Java 12. Okay. 3 and 2. We are passing 2, but we are calling a void method. Okay, so what's the problem? 3 and 2. 12. The main method under solve comparison problem, the main method int long is ambiguous for the type demo. 3 and 2. Okay, it's because that is a very good example. Okay, we have a main method here, one with int and long, and then the other one both both have a long parameters. Okay, that's ambiguous, meaning we have a syntax error. It's because the 3 and 2 can be promoted to int, can be promoted to double. Because take note, the smallest integer data type that we have is byte. Since we have int, so the 3 and 2 is already can be promoted to either int or long. So having said that, so we cannot just have a main method having only that one. So if you going to run this, try again. Okay, there's still an error. Why? Maybe. Okay, let's try the error. Ambiguous for the type. Okay, and line number 12. Try another. 3 and 2. What's the problem? You have an error there. Okay, because we have another here. Okay, let's try to have that one. Okay, so that's only an example. Int long int there. Okay, now we have an output int long 5. So int long 5, this one. So we can now access this one. So the byte value that we passed on to the main method has been promoted now to int long. Since this is only the two available, this is only the method having two parameters. Okay, so that's the meaning of this. Okay, the promotion. Okay, and then in the absence of this one, for example, if we don't have let me just put this inside of the comment. Okay, if the only available, for example, is only these methods. Okay, so Java will execute this one, and the 2 byte values there, it can be now promoted to long. Okay, because this is the only available method that we have here to catch the 2 values. So long. Okay, that's it. Next. Okay, we have an example of method overloading with type promotion if matching found. If there are matching type arguments in the method, type promotion is not performed. So in this case, let's try. We have a public static void main int a int b, for example. So if matching found, there are matching type arguments. Type promotion is not performed. Okay, so this example only shows that since we pass, for example, this value, okay, the 3 and 2 at line number 12. Okay, so if this how should I say that? If this one is not available, for example, if this one, the long and long is not available, or if it's an available, let's try. Okay, we have now long, and then now we have an int. So let's try. Okay, let's try to run this one. And then the output is 5. Okay, so that this one is a good example. Okay, what we're trying to point out here is that if you have both long and both int, okay, and then we pass a 3 and 2. Earlier, since we don't have this one we put in a comment, okay, so the only method that is active earlier, are these two methods. Okay, now what we are saying here is that if we have an int over long and long, and we only pass 3 and 2, for example, so we get 5 value here. So this one will be executed, okay, because this one is nearer to the value that we are trying to pass. Okay, so the match is this one, not the long and long one. Okay, I hope I make it clear to you. Okay, another. So this is an example of overloading with type promotion in case of ambiguity. If there are no matching type arguments in the method and each method promotes similar number of arguments, there will be ambiguity and will result to compile time error. Yeah, this one happens already in our example earlier. Okay, because if we have a long int there and then we have for example int long, okay, so that will generate a syntax error. Okay, so that's concludes our episode about method overloading. Just take note that just to wrap up, our discussion, the method overloading happens when we have two methods, two or more methods having the same name but different number of parameters, or different data types, or with a different sequence of data. And then the second one, I have shown to you that method main can be overloaded. Okay, method main is a built-in method, but we can overload it by specifying different number of parameters, different data types. For example, we can still also use a main. For those who don't know, okay, that we can actually overload a built-in method main. Okay, and then the type of promotion that we have as the last part of our discussion. So I hope that it helps a lot to you when it comes to method overloading. And that's all for today. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, show your love through comments and favorites. God bless and thank you for watching.